Hello there friends and welcome. Today we have yet another Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous guide. Still about the newest DLC, A Dance of Masks. We've already done a review on its best features and now it's time to at long last cover my favorite part about it, all of the new 11 archetypes that require the DLC but can be used anywhere in the game. These are definitely my new favorite archetypes back in the game because of how unique they are. As I do realize a common complaint about the game is that for all of the classes and archetypes you have, a lot of them still play kinda similar to each other. This is not really the same, at least not for the best, most unique archetypes we have now, as they often do something no other class or archetype can do, even through items, gear, abilities and so on. I wanna start with one of my favorites, and definitely one of the most unique, the Warpriest, MANTIS ZEALOT. This subclass is quite thematic, in that you are essentially an assassin of the Red Mantis Order, who worships a new deity they added to the game. I don't know how to pronounce it, Akaikak or something like that. It's a Mantis god of assassins. This class is all about using the new weapon type they've added in the DLC, the Sawtooth Saber. Sawtooth Sabers essentially are light, finessable weapons that hit as hard as a long sword. The only downside is they don't have the best critical range, right? So it's also the same as a long sword instead of, let's say, a rapier, scimitar or kukri. And well, the Mantis Zealot, while losing access to some of the Warpriest bonus combat feats, he kinda already gets all the best ones for Sawtooth weapons for free. Starting with both the proficiency as it is an exotic weapon, followed by weapon focus, then at level 4 specialization, level 8 greater focus, and 12 greater weapon specialization, so it kinda makes up for losing a few bonus combat feats. When I say this class is a blast to play even early, it's because your most unique ability is gained right at level 1. The Red Shroud Aura. As a move action, but you can also activate it before battle, you essentially get both defensive and offensive bonuses. First, a +1 dodge bonus to AC, which is very good considering dodge bonuses stack with themselves, and even fast healing, which is regeneration per round, equal to your base attack bonus. Warpriests don't have full base attack bonus, as they're also spellcasters with up to level 6 spells, which means they finish at 15 BAB, but still 15 healing is pretty powerful, mostly early when you don't have other great sources of healing. The dodge bonuses will also increase every 4 levels up to +6 at level 20. The only limitation this ability has is that you can only turn it on for a number of minutes equal to your dexterity modifier, but later in the game it's very easy to get higher than +10, +15 even dexterity mod. At level 7 you get to turn it on as a swift action instead of move, and level 13 free action. This kinda doesn't matter because you can always activate it before battle starts anyways, as to not waste any type of action during battle doing so. Anyways, another amazing part is that right at level 3, you already get one of your strongest abilities, Deadly Fascination. Whenever you kill any enemy with a Sawtooth Saber, other enemies in a massive area around it will be fascinated. One of the best forms of crowd control because fascinated enemies can't really do anything at all, unless they succeed at a will save. Enemies tend to have low will, and while the DC is not the best, right, it's 10 plus half your class level, plus your dexterity modifier, the ability itself has built-in increases to DC, because first, if you're wielding 2 Sawtooth Sabers, and you'll be, the DC increases by an extra +2, and then, if your Red Shroud ability is activated, it mostly always will be, you'll get a further +2, so that's already a built-in +4 you can have even at level 1. It's definitely an extremely powerful ability, especially early, because look, whenever you kill an enemy, it's applied again. Which means you kill one enemy, all nearby enemies are fascinated. You kill another of the fascinated enemies, the ability procs again, which also helps you making enemies fail the save, if they pass the first time. While the enemies themselves can make a new save to end the effect if they take damage, it's honestly still quite powerful. Once again, I'm usually all about abilities that are amazing even early, and this is exactly the type of ability that's that good. Anyways, you still have more benefits. At level 4, you have Mantis Swarm. Essentially, so long as you have your Red Shroud on, enemies near you must make a Fortitude saving throw, otherwise they will take bleed damage from the swarms surrounding you. While the bleed damage is rather low, this has another amazing benefit. This passive still empowers all of your damage with Sawtooth Sabers by increasing amounts, equal to 3d6 even at level 18. Then at level 7 you get the Fading passive, which increases your defenses to the max. This is actually the same logic followed by all of the Mantis Zealot abilities, and why I find it so powerful, because pretty much everything you get is applied on top of your Red Shroud, right? So it's an extra benefit, which means you don't have to constantly turn on multiple abilities with multiple resources and so on. Not really. You just activate Red Shroud and you get everything added. But anyways, Fading essentially provides you with concealment percentage chances to avoid both attacks and targeted spells, becoming even as high as around 60% at max level. Don't forget you are still a spellcaster with up to level 6 spells, still have access to the Warpriest blessings, which can provide a few nice buffs, and eventually your capstone ability aspect of the Mantis is quite the force to be reckoned with as well. As a swift action once per day, you'll get damage reduction, also a bite attack that inflicts negative levels, but most importantly it sets your base attack bonus to full, just like a fighter, adds your dexterity modifier to attacks as bleed damage, and even lets you freely teleport all around the enemies as you kill them. This teleportation is quite fun because it's automatically applied, so as you can see here, you can kinda just do the classic teleports behind you meme against all the enemies automatically. The only downside of course is that it has very low duration, 1 minute only, with one use. But overall, as you can see, the Mantis Zealot is not only very unique as far as the weapon type, but quite powerful with multiple abilities that all work together on top of just your Red Shroud and give you both more offenses and more defenses. What's not to love? Great overall, because I think Warpriest is not really a very popular class, although Cult Leader can be quite good. Second, we actually have a new archetype for Skalds, the INCITER. You probably already know how much of a Skald fan I am. I pretty much push them into every party possible because they are that good. Even if you don't care about melee, the Court Poet subclass is great for spells. And well, INCITER is essentially normal Skald, but better. You have two main unique abilities. The first is sneak attack progression, and starting from level 8, you'll get to share and add sneak attack to your allies' attacks, including summons and pets, up to a maximum of 3d6 whenever using your main Skald Rage ability, which will always be activated of course. Second, their normal Rage song is further empowered by the Insult passive. Any enemy that starts inside your Raging song will have to make a will saving throw or take a -2 penalty to their attack rolls and skill checks. This is then upgraded at level 10 to make enemies also suffer increasing penalties to both armor class and will saving throws. So essentially we are adding even more on top of what was already a very powerful ability, right? Because just like the Red Mantis from Warpriest, where everything is added on top of your Red Shroud, the INCITER Skald's most powerful abilities are also directly added on top of his Inspire Rage, which will always be in effect. And now you can not only increase the offensive capabilities of your allies even further through sneak attack, plus of course even debuff the enemy's defenses and attack rolls. The only downside is the DC for the Insult ability is kinda low, and unlike the Mantis Zealot, we don't really have easy ways of increasing it for free. But hey, it's added on top of something you are already using. If the enemy fails, it's basically a free effect. Just don't expect them to fail much on unfair, at least not for the Mythic demons. Anyways, the INCITER Skald doesn't really lose anything important. Basically, you won't be as versatile skills-wise, because you lose the bonus to lore and knowledge skills, also lore master. The Skald abilities you lose are very poor anyways, like Songs of the Fallen, Dirge of Doom, chances are you would never be using this, and the awful damage reduction. On the other hand, you still retain almost all of the rage powers. The ones you lose you can just get to an extra feat, and of course you still have all the extra bonus call talents. Definitely a must-have, and I would recommend you respec all of your Skalds into Inciter unless they are court poets, which are for a different niche anyways. Now let's cover another one of my favorites, the Titan Fighter, which is essentially a fighter that's all about dual-wielding two-handed weapons, great swords, falchions, even rich weapons like glaives for shards. Everything is viable. It always surprises me that Pathfinder doesn't have the Monkey Grip feat, unlike D&D and let's say Neverwinter Nights 2, which, well, essentially let you do this for free. So in a way, what this means is you can't really get the ability to do this anywhere else. It's either Titan Fighter or bust. Another great benefit of Titan Fighter is that instead of some of the normal fighter bonus feats, you trade them for kinda like the Ranger ones, in that essentially it lets you pick all of the dual wielding two-weapon fighting feats for free while bypassing the dexterity requirements. After all, Titan Fighters are all about strength, so as early as the second level you can already pick the first two-weapon fighting feat, the same for the other levels, even while dumping your dexterity. While the Titan Fighter doesn't get weapon training, he gets abilities that increases his attack and damage rolls when dual wielding two-handed weapons anyway, such as Incredible Heft, and most importantly, even the ability to double your strength modifier on both the main and offhand. This is important because by default, when dual wielding two-handed weapons, you won't get as high a bonus to damage from power attack as if you were two-handing just one weapon. But with Unstoppable Strike and Giant Smite, you kinda make up for that, especially now that you can achieve even higher strength through one of the ultimate armors, so you can essentially add something like plus 50 or even more to both the main hand and offhands. What this means is the Titan Fighter will essentially have more attacks than a normal fighter that's two-handing because of dual wielding, and still get great damage bonuses. Just be careful because dual wielding two-handed weapons does carry a pretty hefty penalty to attack rolls, especially early, but in the build I have prepared we'll have ways of overcoming that. Alright, now let us cover one of the most unique, if not the most unique of them all outright, the Magic Deceiver Arcanist archetype. First, it's an Arcanist that's a spontaneous caster, which means you work fully based on charisma. And unlike other casters, you'll always have all of your spells available as early as you reach a new spell level. The downside, however, is that first, you don't get any bonus spells from having high charisma, but abundant casting can overcome that. Second, your spellbook selection is rather poor. To be fair, you have a very limited amount of spells, and most of the best ones aren't actually here. And by the way, this is pretty crippling, you can only cast up to level 6 spells, unlike normal Arcanists, which are full casters and can go up to level 9 of course. You also don't get any Arcanist exploit at all, which is kinda sad because potent magic is really good. Now, I know this might seem like a lot of downsides, and to be fair, they are pretty crippling, but there's something really fun when it comes to Magic Deceiver. First we have, of course, the Magic Fusion ability, something no other class or character in the game gets to do. With it, you can essentially fuse two different spells in one. It's not just about combining these spell effects, because you can also alter some of the ways they work. For example, you can change the spell school to the one you choose. Second, you can change the spell targeting area, which is very good, because you can then turn single target spells into area of effect. You even get to change the corresponding saving throw. Just the ability to change the spell school is great by itself, because everything can then be enchantment, so long as you combine it with an enchantment spell, and enchantment is the school that has the biggest support when it comes to DC boosting gear. Lastly, your fused spells can go above the damage cap in some cases. For example, level 6 combined spells have unlimited number of damage dice, so something like Disintegrate or I Chain Lightning can hit for higher than 20 d6 damage just by combining them, which helps because now you do have gear that lets you cast up to around 26 caster level, even if you aren't a Merged Angel or Lich. And by the way, because the Magic Deceiver is not a full spellcaster, you cannot merge with Lich, unfortunately, which is, to be fair, a very big downside. Now, are the fuse spells worth it? Well, there's some fun stuff you can do with them, of course. For example, if you are an AZATA with Zippy Magic and you combine Disintegrate with Chain Lightning, your character will deal massive amounts of damage as area of effect. You can also make something like Greater Dispel Magic into area of effect and combine it with either damage or a crowd control effect, so you truly dispel everything, then hit the enemy with more damage or a nasty debuff. Another very fun and effective combo is making Phantasmal Killer into area of effect, which of course means you'll have an effect kinda like the Weird spell, which is level 9, as early as level 13 instead of 17, as this is when you get Phantasmal Killer. For mass area of effect instant death. There's some other fun stuff you can do, of course, that I'll save for the standalone Magic Deceiver guide. Last but not least, Magic Deceiver is quite unique in that you have a few different paths you can develop your character as. 3 of them really stand out. Fake Celebrity, for example, combines Bard with Magic Deceiver, as you'll have a song ability that will debuff the enemy's attack, rolls and damage rolls, also saving throws against charm and fear effects, and later you have other abilities for debuffing the saving throws even further. You can also use Spell Fabrication as a way of getting more spell casts per day. Living Deity, on the other hand, will combine the best Oracle feature, the Revelations, on top of your Arcanist, while Time Manipulator has the very useful and quite unique Chronomancy skill that essentially lets you fully restore the spellbook and abilities of any ally multiple times per day eventually, just as if they had rested. Quite powerful for something you get so early, and this will never stop being useful, of course. Unfortunately, when it comes to magic fusing, I'm not sure if it's a bug or an oversight, or maybe it just works as intended, but I could not duplicate some effects. For example, they have unique peer into spells, for example peer into reflexes, peer into mind. These all reduce the enemy saving throws by a very nasty amount, and they don't allow a save nor spell resistance. There's also peer into endurance, so you have reflex, will, and fortitude saving throws, but they just didn't work when combined with other spells. If I had, for example, peer into mind plus the hold person spell, the enemy simply would not get hit with the debuff. Only the hold person crowd control effect. Kinda disappointing. The same for stuff like Hideous Laughter plus Haunting Mists, which should let Hideous Laughter hit as an area of effect, thus bypassing the need to get the best Joke's mythic ability. But when combined this way, well, Hideous Laughter just wouldn't proc. I think it's a bug. Otherwise, it's limiting a class that's already quite limited by itself. After all, you have a pretty poor spellbook, you don't get the best crowd control effects or buffs. And while you can do some neat stuff, as I mentioned before, this is a game where you have Merged Angel and Lich getting level 9 mythic spells as early as level 13, when you would only have level 5 spells as a Magic Deceiver, and quite limited ones at that. Even if you can have like a quasi-weird through area of effect Phantasmal Killer. Not to mention other mythic paths like AZATA and Demon as full casters are also very strong, but you can always combine them with Magic Deceiver as well. Still, I do think it's quite a unique class in what it does, considering you can't get none of the abilities here through anything else. But now let's cover something else. We have Bard and CHELAXIAN DIVA. This Bard subclass also has a lot of unique abilities, but I mean they have flavor, but they aren't exactly good. First you have Devastating Area. They all fit the whole theme of being a diva, which I think is very fun, like an opera singer. This ability lets you spend 1 round of bardic performance, and you can use it even when singing another ability like Inspire Courage, to deal damage to one enemy. Sadly, the damage is very poor, right? It's actually half damage to a living creature even, which is very disappointing. So you'll never do enough damage with this. Like never. Even early game, the damage is gonna be poor. On the other hand, if the creature is affected by your next ability gained at level 3, Tragedy of False Hope, they will become vulnerable to it. Tragedy of False Hope is quite good, at least, because the effect is crippling. If the enemy fails a will saving throw, they'll be automatically flat-footed, as they'll get stuck with highly reduced armor class. The problem is the DC isn't really great. On the other hand, as early as the 2nd level you already have the Prima Donna ability, which lets you increase the DC of your bardic performances by spending additional rounds of it. And well, mass flat-footing is quite debilitating, especially so early. But the main issue I have with this is that I couldn't really find ways of combining it with Inspire Courage, which is something you always want to have turned on because of how good it is for party-wide buffing. You also have Deadly Vibrato. This is basically a passive on top of whatever song you're already using. So you can combine it with, let's say, Inspire Courage. It just deals very minor damage to enemies, and they can even save against it, but the damage is very poor, like 3d8 at max level. Any Mythic demon is gonna laugh at that. It's not even a mosquito bite. But at least it's added on top of what you already have. Blazing Rondo at level 9. This essentially copies the effect of the haste spell, although I don't think they stack as far as more attacks. On the other hand, it can be powerful in that it grants a very big dodge bonus to AC to all of your party members. The same for attack rolls and reflex saving throws, equal to 1/5 of your bard level. The problem is, once again, why would I activate this and lose out on, let's say, Inspire Courage or Tragedy of False Hope, if I could just have an ally cast haste on me, for a similar effect for the most important one anyways, which is the extra attack. Level 12 means Vindictive Soliloquy. I hope that's how you pronounce it. It kinda copies the Call Lightning Storm spell, but it deals sonic damage instead. The problem is, once again, the damage is very poor. 5d10, Mythic demons are gonna laugh at that, sorry, but they just are. Meanwhile, at level 16 you have the ultimate Diva power, Banshee's Requiem, which is kinda like a level drain aura, but you know, liches do it way better, because they don't have to save against it. Anyways, my main concern about this class is that, unlike the Mantis, Zealot we just covered, plus of course the Skald Inciter, well, these classes, as I said before, they have all sorts of powerful abilities that are automatically applied to their main ability, which will always be in effect. For the CHELAXIAN Diva, not really. You all have different abilities that have to be activated independently, and they don't really mesh together because they cost something. Besides Deadly Vibrato, which doesn't have that strong of an effect. At the very least, you're still a bard. You still have the most powerful bard song, which is Inspire Courage. You still have full spellcasting. But just like the Skald Inciter, you do lose all the lore and knowledge bonuses. The thing is, the bard archetypes are kind of poor, besides Dirge Bard, which doesn't lose anything but also doesn't gain anything that good, so I suppose you might as well stick with CHELAXIAN Diva for what it does. Now let's cover another very fun new archetype, the Drunken Master Monk. Well, as the name itself implies, it's a monk that's all about getting drunk. As a matter of fact, you'll get a Drunken Key pool starting from level 3. This pool is unique because so long as you consume alcohol, and there are many alcoholic beverages in the game, although they are treated as trash, I believe, so be sure to buy them back from merchants if you sold them already. Also some cooking items. And well, you can just keep on quaffing them to restore key points. By the way, this works even with Lich, which is very fun, because that's already one of the best mythic paths for a monk. So unlike the normal monk, you have a very easy way of constantly restoring your key points, which is great because the Drunken Master has many powerful abilities that increase in power the higher your Drunken Key pool is, such as Drunken Combat, which will provide you not only an increase to attack rolls, but even armor class, as alchemical a very rare type of bonus. Don't forget that your Drunken Key pool is actually limited by your level, right? So you can't just drink alcohol and increase it forever. At least not beyond the cap. Besides that, you have the Drunken Power feature, which is very powerful. As a swift action, you can spend an increasing amount of Drunken Key points to highly increase your damage. Which, by the way, is already being increased by the Drunken Combat feature. Now it's even more. Starting with 1d8 at level 5, and even up to 5d8 on every single punch attack at level 18. This lasts for a number of rounds equal to your wisdom modifier, which is good because monks, even early, can have like 14 to 18 wisdom, so it will last for a whole battle, definitely. You do get two very special abilities that work kinda like a dragon's breath. The first one is fire, water, breath. You are essentially just breathing alcohol at the enemies. It can deal damage, fire damage, but it's very low damage and consumes a lot of drunken key points. Plus, you know, the enemies can save against it and the DC will never be high. I wouldn't bother. I mean, 1d6 points of fire per monk level. Once again, demons will just laugh at this, not to mention the fact they are resistant to fire damage anyways. The second one, however, is much better, Caden's Streak. Also, amusingly enough, despite the fact Caden is the god of drinking and alcohol, you are still a monk, which means you have to be lawful in alignment. No chaotic monks, sorry. Anyways, Caden's Streak is a very powerful debuff. If the enemies fail the save, they'll get not only a -2 penalty to AC, become blinded, flat-footed, and sickened, so it stacks a lot of powerful stuff on top of each other. Flat-footed enemies have lower AC, the same for blinded, and then sickened is also a penalty on attack rolls, skill checks, ability checks, weapon damage rolls. It's amazing. Plus, it even greases the area, and we all know how powerful grease is. The only downside is just like the fire breath ability, the DC will never be high. But hey, at least this is way better than just pathetic damage. There's something to be said about being a full Drunken Master, so a pure one, because its capstone ability Eternal Drunkenness is very good. It grants you a huge +6 alchemical bonus to all physical stats, so you won't need to be an alchemist for mutagen, and even increases the amount of your drunken key pool. Overall, it's definitely a solid choice, although monks are already a very good class anyways. I mean, Scaled Fist is good, Sohei is amazing, Zen Archer is great, and now Drunken Master also very powerful. Now let us cover another one of my favorite new archetypes, the Ranger's Sable Company Marine. As you might already know, I also love pets, just like Skalds, they are really good in any party. And the Sable Company Marine actually has a unique pet no one else can get, a Hippogriff Companion, kinda like Obrig, the Griffin Shifter. First, you'll get the Griffin as early as level 1, which is great because unlike a normal Ranger, who only gets a pet at level 4, your Griffin will always fully scale to your Ranger level, so you don't have to bother picking the Boon Companion feat. Second, the Griffin is the only pet besides the horse that already starts at large size, which means your Ranger can ride it as early as level 1. Amazing because of how good mounted combat is, it can let you bypass your AC and focus on the pet's AC instead. And the Griffin even has extra benefits when you are riding it. For example, whenever your Griffin uses its flying attack, which is essentially the same as the charge ability except it ignores its main weakness of needing a free path between yourself and the enemy, the Griffin just flies and hits the enemy from above. Well, anyways, when doing that, your Ranger, who is riding the Griffin, will automatically attack the same target, and guess what? The enemy will be considered flat-footed against these attacks. Flat-footed is one of the strongest debuffs possible in this game. The only downside is that flying attack is a full round action, but the Griffin does get pounce added on top of it later, which means it can full attack even through charge, and of course, the Ranger themselves can also full attack. The Griffin also has other unique qualities, such as the strongest wings. As early as level 3, it can perform a new combat maneuver. You essentially let 2 gusts of air that hit a very large cone and can bow rush the enemy. Lastly, at level 12, your Griffin will become even more powerful defenses-wise, as its wings will grant it a +3 dodge to AC against melee attacks, the same for the Ranger. Plus, enemies around it will be treated as if walking on difficult terrain, which slows their movement. And by the way, another unique feature of the Griffin is that it's immune to difficult terrain because it flies, right? Which means as early as level 1, you can have a caster drop the classic Grease on the enemy, and the Griffin will be able to move just fine with the rider on top of it without getting knocked down. Your Sable Company Marine capstone ability is also quite powerful, Sable Strike. If the target of your Griffin's flying ability is one of your favorite enemies and you have enough to select all demons, both the Rider and the Griffin will automatically score a critical hit, very good, on their first attack, with increased critical multiplier. Lastly, you don't really lose anything important. As a Sable Company Marine, only favorite terrain, which is the Ranger's most subpar feature. You retain access to all the favorite enemies, and even the Ranger's special combat feats, what's not to love. Also Quarry and improved Quarry, even evasion. Overall, it's definitely a very powerful class because of how good the Griffin Companion is, the same for Ranger as a whole. Is it better than Demon Slayer? Well, Demon Slayer is quite good in Wrath of the Righteous, and I suppose the Griffin will be the main appeal because of synergies that I've explained that you wouldn't really get with a dog or a wolf, despite the fact they're still amazing pets. Now let's discover another somewhat subpar new archetype, I'm afraid, the BLADEBOUND Magus. This Magus' most unique ability is that you can conjure a black blade, which is a scimitar. Whenever you want, it will replace your weapon, and it gets some minor enhancement bonuses for free. Your sharpening of the black blade ability at level 3 will also make it even more powerful above what a normal weapon would have, because it's extra bonuses to damage. You can even change your damage type as a free action to any elemental, or most importantly, Sonic or Force. Force being the best because it's irresistible, it's just that, you know, you have the Bane of Spirit Ring in this game, which does the same but better. Now your most unique ability is Independent Ego, which essentially lets you summon the Black Blade as an ally that you attack the enemies on its own. My main issue with this is that the Black Blade was very poor, at least the summon variant, which is what I was most excited for. It couldn't really hold its ground on the endgame. I mean, it does have a lot of bonuses like ability scores equal to your intelligence, and by the way, I tested this with an AZATA Magus who had the best intelligence you can have possible, higher than 40, and even then the blade was not good. It was stuck with 3 attacks. You couldn't really buff it because it only lasts 1 minute, although you can constantly use it so long as you have arcane pool points remaining. And well, what can I say, the damage was just subpar. Kinda disappointing, I was expecting a lot more out of it. Your last unique ability is quite good, at least Life Drinker. Starting from level 19, you'll get quite a lot of temporary HP whenever killing an enemy with the Black Blade, or if the Black Blade itself does it through Independent Ego. If you already have temporary HP from this, you instead restore points to your arcane pool. Anyways, the main complaint I have about this archetype is that it's pretty subpar. Right, the blade abilities are not really that good, especially the summon variant. And Magus is a strong class because look, you could have Arcane Rider for the pet, which is very good, or of course Sword Saint for the best weapon abilities possible. Even Eldritch Archer, which fits a nice niche, so Bladebound is kinda just there, I'm afraid. On the other hand, we have a very fun new archetype for Slayer, Bloodseeker, which is kinda all about being a dumpier. Right, you even have the little Vampire Hunter D, I think, icon here with the little hat. Or Alucard, I suppose, which is another very famous half-vampire. Well, you actually have to be evil, and you are treated as undead for the purposes of channel energy, so healed by negative and damaged by positive, I believe. Which kinda means you don't have to be a dumpier because you already get this for free. Now, while you do lose one of the best Slayer features, the bonus feats, which can also be Ranger weapon combat feats, you get very unique nocturnal abilities instead, which all work based on a blood pool of points. You start with 2 points, and get an additional 1 for every level you have. I'll be blunt, most of the abilities are subpar, especially the ones that deal damage, because, like I said, it's Wrath of the Righteous, you're dealing with enemies that have very high hit points. Something like 1d4 per level is never gonna cut it. Just never. On the other hand, the buffs you have are very good, especially Predatory Might and Predatory Prowess. The first increases your strength by Profane bonus, the same for damage, while the second is Profane bonuses to Dexterity and AC. You can get it around level 6 or so, which is way before you would get the best Profane bonus possible, Nocticulus Gift. That's only level 15, 16 plus. So they will last you a long time. And yes, you can combine both. Sense Vitals is also very good since Slayer doesn't get spells and that's even more sneak attack to you. And here's a very fun part, the Bloodseeker surprised me because it can be quite the good summoner as well. As early as level 1, you have the ability to summon Dire Wolves, which by the way is a level 3 spell, so characters, even a full spellcaster, would only get it at level 5+. You get it as early as level 1. While the Dire Wolves might not be that overpowered or anything, it's a very powerful summon considering you get them at level 1, and you can summon multiple ones of them. The best summon, however, comes at level 8, which is the Bloodebound Beast, actually a unique summon only Bloodseeker gets. They cost 2 blood pool points as opposed to just 1 for the wolves, but trust me, they are quite powerful. Not overpowered because summons in Wrath, you kinda have to invest a lot into them, but the Bloodebound Beast by themselves are good even without buffs. You might remember them from Kingmaker, where they are enemies in a few dungeons and random encounters, and I do think they actually have close enough to the same stat sheet they had in Kingmaker, and these are very, very good stats for a summon, at least one that you would get at level 8. Don't forget there's no summon limit in this game, you can keep spamming them so long as you have resources left. So yeah, Bloodebound Beast, very good. Even later they can still have their uses, but of course when you're fighting endgame mythic demons they won't be that good as when you'd get them at level 8. Don't forget that because they are undead, you can enhance them through leech powers and also summon gear and of course the Mythic Ascendant Summons ability, as I'll show later in the build for Bloodseeker. Bloodseekers also have another very nice and unique ability gained at level 10. This essentially lets you transform into a swarm of ravens, which no one else can do. The swarm, unfortunately, is not a tiny swarm, so it's not immune to weapon damage, but you can get good AC, especially through the Lich path and buffs. Anyways, its most unique feature is that when using your swarm attack, which is area of effect, you will automatically restore 1 point of your blood pool for each enemy you hit. Since it's area of effect, you can easily hit around 3 to 4 enemies per use. So if you hit 4, that's 4 extra blood points you're getting. Amazing, because now you can spam the Bloodebound Beast summons you got at level 8, well, as many times as you want. Because the Carrion Form ability only costs a single blood point, so long as you have just 1 point remaining, you can turn into the ravens and start draining all the enemies. Of course, the only downside is that the damage isn't really good, although it can debuff enemies with penalties to constitution and even nauseate them, which prevents them from taking any actions. It's just that the DC is not that good. But it is something you can spam every round, most importantly to restore blood points. And the damage part at least always works, regardless of the enemy saving or not, and always hits, but it's only like 20 or 30 damage or so. The Bloodseeker Capstone is quite fun as well, Master of Blood, especially because it provides you nice profane bonuses to strength, dexterity and intelligence, and most importantly automatically applies both the Empower spell and Bolster spell feats metamagic to your damaging blood pool abilities, because like I said, they deal very low damage by default. The only problem is, well, it takes until level 20 for this to happen, and even then you're dealing what, 150 damage? Area of effect through Blood Jet, or most importantly Cone of Blood, which is the area of effect one. It's not that worth it. If I was designing the class, I would instead put the Empower and Bolster abilities in earlier levels, right? So you would actually have a use for the damaging blood pool abilities. Oh, actually, we have even more unique Bloodseeker abilities. Someone at the developer side really likes this class, I think. Starting with Bloodlust, a very powerful passive that increases both your attack and damage until the end of combat, the more enemies you kill. It's just that the bonus is limited to half your intelligence modifier, but well, you can later get nice intelligence even without being a caster through gear and buffs, and you're always killing enemies in combat, of course. The Sharp Teeth feature also provides them with a free bite attack. If you get a critical hit with it, you'll also restore blood pool points. Carrion Form is definitely more reliable for this because it always works, as opposed to needing a critical with one secondary attack. This bite, however, becomes quite good at level 9, when it's upgraded to automatically first give enemies negative levels, amazing, because they stack, and even provide you with temporary hit points all at once, also stackable. Overall, it's definitely one of the most unique archetypes and a worthy choice because of how much stuff you can do, especially summons, the buffs, and the blood pool abilities. I believe we are now close to the last archetypes, and we have Kineticist and Kinetic Sharpshooter. It's essentially a Kineticist that empowers your blasts with ranged weapon damage, so you do start being proficient with all ranged weapons. I'll be blunt, perhaps I haven't tested this class well enough yet, but I found it was kinda subpar, because I couldn't really find a way of firing multiple blasts per turn with a ranged weapon, right? You can only increase the damage of your blasts based on a ranged weapon, but you're still just shooting enemies once, which is very poor because, you know, you could just use Deadly Earth to blow all enemies away, or, most importantly, the Kinetic Blade to attack multiple times with your full blast damage. At the very least, you still keep the metakinesis feats. Lastly, we have Inquisitor and Living Grimoire. I'll be blunt, I was also kinda disappointed by this one. Your most unique feature is Holy Book. Just like the BLADEBOUND Magus, you can summon a book that you wield as a weapon, either on the main hand or offhand. The main issue is, well, the Magus Blade at least is a scimitar, which is a very good weapon type with high critical range. The Holy Book, though, is a light mace, a very poor weapon type. But at least you have the Warpriest Sacred Weapon feature, which can increase the damage of your light mace by a lot. Eventually even higher than a Great Sword. Second, the Living Grimoire is actually a prepared spellcaster just like Wizard, based on intelligence instead of wisdom. Kind of a downgrade to be fair, because a lot of divine spells are better as a spontaneous caster, because you can then heal debuffs whenever needed, or use stuff like Death Ward when fighting undead enemies without having to prepare the spell and so on. You are still an Inquisitor with up to level 6 spells though. Third, just like a Warpriest or a Magus, you can enhance your Holy Book with different effects. It's essentially the same as Magus, except with much lower duration. Right? Triple Elemental, Unholy, Holy, Axiomatic, and so on. Problem is, it's just 1 round per class level, kinda like a Warpriest. Unlike Magus, which is eventually 10 times that duration, 1 minute per class level, so nowhere as good. The last unique feature is Blast Script, which kinda works as a way of pushing you to both attack with the book and cast spells and alternate between them. Whenever you hit the enemy with a Holy Book, you'll get increased caster level and DC for your next spell. Also, whenever you cast a spell, your book will get the Bane Weapon special ability for a few rounds. Also increased critical multiplier. And later apply the Crushing Despair effect for free on enemies. So the main issue with this is that there is no point in casting damage or crowd control spells as an Inquisitor. Because look, their spell book, it's mostly about divine buffing spells. The very few crowd control spells they get aren't really worth it, besides level 6 ones like Overwhelming Presence, or even Greater Command as level 5. Here's the thing though, to get high DC in this game as an Inquisitor, the Blast Script ability isn't good enough. You would also need to min-max your intelligence, and Inquisitor has no use for that, because the book itself won't use intelligence for attacks and damage. And once again, you just don't have enough good crowd control or damage spells to justify such a heavy investment in intelligence, at least in my humble opinion. Lastly, you do actually lose one of the strongest Inquisitor features in this game, Judgment. Judgment is extremely powerful in Wrath, because first, as you level up, you can stack multiple effects, and they are all great. Destruction for damage, we also have Justice for attack rolls, even Protection for AC, always sacred bonuses that are very rare. Most importantly, in Wrath, as early as Mythic level 1, you can get a Mythic ability that makes your judgments permanent, which means you have infinite uses and can always activate them at the start of battle. So overall, like some of the other classes I covered, it's just subpar to what you already have. For example, Sacred Huntsmaster is amazing, Monster Tactician can be fun if you're summoning. Even Inquisitor Judge has its uses, but leaving Grimoire? I'm afraid not. I would personally have enjoyed it more if the Grimoire itself had unique abilities, kinda like we just covered with Slayer and Bloodseeker, of course. And well, I do think this is it, and we did cover all of the new archetypes. Later I'll release standalone guides with a build for the ones I found most fun and entertaining. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our A Dance of Masks new DLC Archetypes guide. If you found it useful, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and consider becoming a channel member if you can. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, most likely with the new spells, best items, and feats the DLC has to offer. We still have more ground to cover. See you next time.